everybody. I got Neal Foard here today, and Neal, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so much fun to have me on your show, Regan. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I appreciate you being able to come on, and you did it pretty quick. I think I asked you a week ago.
Yeah, you betcha. I'm game.
Good deal.
I
All
love
right,
it.
great.
I love these kinds of conversations.
Yes, and I honestly I did not realize how much I enjoyed it. Also,
Oh, good.
I kind of stumbled on this, and it was something that may have come up a couple times in the past in a different form that I didn't take hold of. I should have taken that enthusiasm when that opportunity came, and I should have jumped on it. But as life would be, it went in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, better late than never.
Yes, I truly believe that, man. And on that note, I'm going to be honest with you. I have to start off with this. I wanted to start off with something else, but you're a great storyteller, and you were just telling me about a little bit of your beginnings there and how that.
Yeah.
Where do you
Yeah.
get
Is it?
your
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Where do you get your topics?
So by and large, anything that I post on, say, YouTube or TikTok comes right out of my life experience. And there's a couple of reasons why I do that. And the first is, when you're there, you know what happened. And so you get the advantage of being able to flavor it and color it with details you wouldn't think of if you're just making stories up. My background comes from 25 years in advertising, where I used to work for some big international agencies like Saatchi and Saatchi and Foot Cone and Belding. And my job there as a creative director and as an executive creative director was to try to persuade clients to buy and produce advertising concepts, ideas. And in order to get them to, sign a check and say, yeah, we want to produce that commercial, you have to paint them a very vivid picture of what's going to happen, of something that, talk about, you have to proof of concept. You have to prove to them in just a conversation that what will wind up on film is a good idea and it will do an economic job for them. It will persuade somebody to feel a certain way. And that art form, you could say I had 10,000 hours in that. Malcolm Gladwell is famous for saying, hey, 10,000 hours is what gave us the Beatles, because they practiced enough to evolve into their own thing. And that for me is my background, is I had spent 10,000 hours trying to persuade people to produce advertising ideas. And from that, you learn a kind of discipline about how much is too much and how much is not enough.
And you have to be
Story.
authentic. You have to be authentic because most people could sniff that from a mile away.
You don't learn that right away. It takes a long time before you see, oh, yeah, there's a big difference between meaning it and not meaning it.
Yeah.
If you watch like a sporting event, you can see the ones that are enjoying it, like the ones that just take joy in, like in tennis, for example. You would watch Rafael Nadal. That guy loves that game. Same with Roger Federer, despite his reputation as being kind of a stoic Swiss machine. He's a deeply passionate person about enjoying life. And the same is true of musicians, as you can imagine. I mean, one of the great attractions of the Beatles for me was they always just seem to be having so much fun, and it's infectious. Well, when you were saying, authentic and genuineness and so forth, when it comes to selling something to somebody, I don't think there's anything quite so powerful as them sensing from you that you believe it.
I can believe that without a doubt, man. I'll be honest with you. And being lost in the moment when you're exactly where you're
Yeah.
supposed to be, and you're so there that you get lost in that moment. And if you could get someone to get lost with you, you could probably
Yeah.
sell them anything.
Well, boy, we should spend the entire time talking about what you just said.
All
That
right,
was a
go for it. Go for it. Tell me
profound.
what you think. 'Cause
Well, let's
you're the
let's
one with
break it down.
10,000 hours. I don't have. I've
Yeah.
been doing this for 5 months. So
Well,
there's
so by the way, how do I pronounce your name correctly? Is it
my name
Reagan
is
or Regan?
Regan Gorno, not Reagan,
Re-
but Regan. Yep.
Regan. Okay. So Regan, what you said was, sort of being present, being in the moment, just existing in the story. I just watched a 60 Minutes piece on Rick Rubin, who is regarded quite justifiably as one of the truly great music producers. And he is very much about existing right there and not letting anything else distract, and absorbing and being, there for it. And, I really wish I had learned that much younger. Like when I was in my 30s, I wish I fully appreciated that. Because, when you're in 30s or you're in 40s, distraction's the name of the game. You're trying to juggle so many damn balls. You're trying to be a family man, maybe. You're trying to impress your boss. You're trying to make enough money to where you feel secure. And what happens to you is you just disconnect from the passion of whatever it is you're doing. And that very famous, that slogan, or that sort of word, which is flow. I forget what the guy's name is, something Chick Mahai or something. And this guy's famous for saying, when you get into a state of flow, time stops. Time is not relevant. You will go hours completely unaware that the seconds are ticking down. And with respect to, say, storytelling as an art form, the beauty of when you are in a story and it's authentic and it really happened and you're communicating it to somebody else, for the two of you, that you get that brief flow. They're nowhere else. They're listening to the details. By the way, men and women are very different about this. I don't know if you've noticed this, Regan.
Oh, yeah, there's a humongous difference.
Yeah, there's a really huge difference. Women are extremely adept at multitasking, and their peripheral vision, and I mean that both in the literal visual sense, but also in the sensible sense, like they sense other things going on. When men are in a story, they are in the television. They are inside the story. And any noise that they hear or any question that gets asked, it's gone. It's not, they don't even hear it. And so my wife is always frustrated. She'll be talking at me for a good solid minute, and she doesn't, and only then does it occur to her, he hasn't heard a word I've said. He's completely absorbed by the Bills game. And, this for me is one of the things I've grown accustomed to, is the sensitivity that not everybody interprets a story the same way. So it's incumbent on you as a storyteller to try to provide enough dramatic beats that they don't get distracted. You've got to keep them on the hook for what happens next. They have to be curious enough about the characters in the story to, especially women, to not allow themselves to notice the flashy objects and the blueberries and so forth. I say that not as a criticism, simply as a difference between men and women.
Yeah. No. Well, we're more of the tree. They're more of the forest.
Yeah. That's a really good way of putting that.
Yeah. We're supposed to be that way. Because we're lacking in something when we're too focused on the tree, and they're lacking when they're too focused on the forest.
Yeah,
actually, they did some psychological studies on men and women that actually led down the path of when you put us together, we're actually unstoppable.
Yeah,
male-female combination is unstoppable.
100%. Well put. The Scotland Yard discovered by accident, not on purpose, that when they would partner male and female detectives, their crime solution ratio went way up.
That's so cool. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yes, because they noticed different things at the crime scene. And so you take these hard-bitten, old-line chauvinist police detectives who get partnered with a woman, and at first they think this is the end of the world, and then they become the chief advocates of, oh, no, laddie, this is how you do it. This is how you get these things solved, because she'll notice things I didn't see, and I'll be able to.
X-Files. As soon as you said it made me think of it.
Right on.
The skeptical one, and the other one was more like a true believer.
Yeah. So it lends itself to more than just men and women. I mean, it's differences of personalities, it's different age groups. One of the most pleasant discoveries of my career was that as I got older and older and older, I loved partnering up with 25-year-olds, 22-year-olds, and we were more powerful than the sum of our parts because we were completely coming at it from different frames of reference. And whenever I hear a criticism say, oh, millennials are this or Gen Z is that, it's like, dude, you don't. Take a chill pill. Come on.
You touched on that. You touched on that in some of your topics and some of your and you actually were saying you read some old books and you're like, man, don't be judging them because you have no idea what two generations was doing before you. We're just rinsing and repeating it. We're rinsing and repeating.
It was a real lesson in humility when my father said, hey, read these old books. Read books that are more than 100 years old. The first was because, we have now graduated to the point where Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is more than 100 years old.
Isn't that wild?
And so Uh, I think it's fantastic. You can read that book, and Regan, it's like it was written last week. It
Let me
is,
let me write that down. Hold on. Which one?
yeah,
That's Carnegie.
yeah. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Every young person I meet that I give a crap about, I buy them a copy of that book because there is so much gold in there. And the story that you were referencing before about the old books, my father had said to me, hey, listen to yourself if I ever read stuff that's more than 100 years old, because anything in it that's still true will always be true. So you go back and you find the great literature of old times. You know, in my case, I've just read all the Russians, Chekhov and Dostoevsky and so on. And what you find out is that as they portray the human comedy, you realize nothing has changed. We are still the same species. We are still making the same mistakes. We are still making it's still a comedy and it's still a tragedy. Okay, so what's the benefit of realizing that? It's that this pathetic portrayal of different generations as somehow inferior or superior to previous generations does not accommodate the fact that under the same circumstances that they lived through, you would do exactly the same thing. When you realize that, you have not only a lot more empathy for people from other generations, not only do you have more respect, but you start to say, what could they teach me? What could I learn from them? What do they know that I don't know? And
Didn't Dostoevsky, didn't he write that book, the Gulag Archipelago?
Solzhenitsyn wrote Gulag Archipelago.
That's okay.
That's a brilliant work.
Now, didn't he say when he was sitting in the Gulag, he said, "How did I get myself here?" Instead of blaming everybody else, didn't he ask that question?
Although
that's
to be fair,
a very profound way to look at life. Because if you look at life through the lens, if you look at your life through the lens of your moment that you're in it, and not focus on what else is going on or who else is going on, but how did I get myself here?
You know, for Solzhenitsyn to come to that kind of conclusion is I believe it's proof of concept for this notion. Solzhenitsyn was definitely, I don't know, in my opinion anyway, when you listen to his imprisonment, how he became a prisoner and so forth, he was an artillery officer in the Soviet army during World War II. For reasons beyond his control and completely accused for wrong reasons, he nevertheless wound up in some penal colony. God knows why. And of all of the people that could claim it was exterior factors that led to his fate, he could have made that claim with good justification. And yet, he doesn't go there. He accepts responsibility for his own fate. If he can do it, nobody else gets a pass. He completely accepts responsibility. And, you know, when he describes in chapter and verse the suffering of the Russian penal system,
it sounds absolutely brutal.
It's brutal. It's Soviet brutality on a scale that you can't, we don't have any reference point to. But it's kind of a crazy thing. But Solzhenitsyn's revelations, his conclusions, his account are a gift to the human race. Anybody that doesn't read that book, or at least make an effort to learn about what it contains, is doing themselves a disservice, because his experience is so thoughtful and it is so instructive that, there's a great quote from Will Rogers. The quote is, "There is a lucky person out there who learns from books. There is a very lucky few who learns from watching others. And the rest of us just have to piss on the electric fence for ourselves." And what I love about it is, if you give yourself permission to absorb the lessons of those that came before, you will do yourself an enormous favor.
Yeah.
Like, you think it's an effort? No, man, they're trying to give you a gift. Dostoevsky's trying to give you a gift. Solzhenitsyn's trying to give you a gift. Mark Twain is, and Carnegie is. And for whatever that book cost you, trust me, that is a pittance compared to the value you're going to get out of it.
Oh yeah. Actually, I was listening to some guys on another show that were talking about bringing everything down to its value based on time.
Oh.
So how much time did it take to make a loaf of bread in 1800 How much time did it take to make a loaf of bread in 1900? How much
Yeah.
time, and then take that time and divide it by an average of how much everybody made that year, and you can literally give a very acute, accurate depiction on what it costs for me to keep my lights on right now versus what it would have kept to keep a candle going, and how many hours you had to earn that candle. Which my light bulbs, they last forever. These things are ridiculous, and it was the math equation these guys were coming up with was so profound, and they were actually saying that time is the real currency. Number one, on the way they were scaling everything out, and two, what was the other? There was two profound thoughts they were making. Oh, I think that we doubled our it wasn't value, our abundance. We double our abundance every 20 years.
Yeah.
Which they said for the last 7,000 years prior to the 1800s, it didn't change at all. They said there was 1,000 years in the Egyptians where it bumped a little bit, and it stayed stagnant for exactly 1,000 years.
Yeah.
It didn't even change. And basically the whole world did that, like a little bump, and then it stagnated, a little bump, and it stagnated.
Regan, you always come up with the most profound things to talk about. No, let me tell you why I say that. Because that idea that you would go, say, 1,000 years with very little change in how human beings go through the world. The day and age we live in now, the rate of change is so quick, so profoundly uncontrolling. It's very hard to keep your feet under you. Now, just in our lifetimes, in my lifetime anyway, hey, I got a great stat for you. I saw a photo of the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk making their very first powered flight, and the moon landing on the moon. How many years do you think it was between those two events? Take a guess.
I believe it was exactly 60.
Oh, wow. Look at you. Good guess. It was 66 years. 66 years between the Wright brothers proving heavier than air
we're walking
flight.
for 10,000 years. Right,
Right.
and just stacking stones and playing with sticks, and then bam, we all of a sudden go from off the ground for one day to the moon.
And the next thing you know, we're landing on the moon.
Insane. And the probability of that happening is I don't know.
Well, and then think. And by the way, when did they land on the moon? 1969. How long has it been since 1969?
Yeah,
well, it's been a little less than 60 years.
Yeah, and so we're due for the next one. And I'll be honest with you, we're gonna touch on what I think the next one is.
What's that?
I think it's that GPT.
Yeah, AI for sure. I think you nailed it. I think that AI is a gateway to who knows?
Well, that's the thing, right? When the cell phone came out, we said, "Oh, this, and this is going to happen." But nobody had a clue.
I would have been there with you. I would have been there with you about a week ago.
Well, and I want to rewind for a second. We're moving so fast, and we both agree on this 100% here, that we're moving so fast that I find, like, my uncle just came and visited me, and I see him confused with some of the technology we have. There's never been a time that 1,000 years where nothing changed. Your grandfather knew everything you were ever going to know.
Yeah, he's a very wise man.
Grandfather's grandfather, and you were going to be the grandfather of a kid that was going to learn exactly the amount of information you knew.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
There was no farmer on the Nile that was going to learn this profoundly new way to fly or something. He was going to do the exact same thing with the exact same hoe and the exact same ox, and everything else was going to be for 1,000 years. Now, we have a generation of about 3 generations of people that literally have watched everything unfold. The TV is obsolete, like cable television. Is obsolete. My kids watch YouTube.
Yep. Yeah. They ran a study. I don't remember who did it, whether it was Deloitte or Rand or whoever, but they said they did a poll and they said, would you be willing to give up all of cable television or TikTok? And Gen Z said they would rather have TikTok than all of cable TV. Now, if I'm the head of NBC or any of the, I'm saying to myself, this is a crisis, but let's go back to, like I said before, Regan, you're hitting these these very significant topics. By the way, do you mind if I ask, around your dinner table, like, so how many people would you say you have dinner with on any given night?
We have dinner as a family 7 days a week, and I have
Awesome.
six children.
Okay, so you've got a nice big table, which means that there's lots of exchange, and and people are talking and they're telling stories, and you're bringing up topics. I've got a family of four, and my kids are just now at the point where they're, I got the benefit of COVID, so in spite of the fact that they were in college, they were staying home, so I got 2 extra years of
Good
them
for you.
in their.
Good for you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so dinner conversation is possibly the most. It is possibly the most significant, most reassuring, most enriching part of our lives together is the dinner conversation. And I lament and I weep for people that do not have the benefit of a lively dinner table. And during those dinner conversations, you have an opportunity. And the opportunity is, what are you going to choose to talk about? And the world that we live in is so fascinating and so filled with profound questions of what will happen next that I sometimes lament that, it makes me quite sad that people don't have the opportunity to explore some of these things together. So let's just talk about the thing that you brought up, which is, I think that AI and, ChatGPT and its ilk, I think that's going to be perhaps the greatest profound effector of our lives moving forward since what? Since indoor plumbing. I don't know.
No,
but
I'm going to go wait. I would say the wheel, man.
Okay.
And
I think you could make a case.
I got a good. I was going to say I can make a case for it.
You can make a case for sure. Okay. So at a dinner table, when you're talking about that subject, is this the kind of thing you talk about with your family?
I try. And
how does it go over?
I've got 5 girls and a son that's 6 years old. They're
Okay.
not really looking to have deep, profound conversations about AI or robots. Now, my oldest daughter was kind enough to do the first couple episodes of this podcast with me. So
Hey.
she's got a big heart and she loves me and she treats me very good. I have no complaints. But after about 2 or 3 episodes, she kind of lost the enamor of it.
Yeah.
And it kind of, she wanted to move on. And that
You had a good run, if you ask me. I think that's pretty nice in that she's a good human to help you out.
Oh yeah, no, she loves me to death, and she's very kind on just tipping the hat and say, "Dad, I'm gonna try to entertain this for 2 hours."
Lucky man.
Yeah.
You show me a man who gets along with his daughters, and I heard a terrific piece of advice, which was that a father's relationship with his daughters is going to determine exactly what kind of man they're going to settle for. So, for example, if you're kind to your daughters and you are a good role model as a man, and you listen to her and you don't interrupt and you treat her with respect and so on, she ain't going to settle for anything less than that in a man.
Yeah.
And that, so all of a sudden, as a father, you say, wow, I got a big responsibility here. I have to model what she thinks a man is, so that when she gets out there in the world, she's either going to put up with it or not put up with it. And a dinner table, or particularly this thing you were talking about where she was a guest on your podcast, I think that's fantastic. We live in the day, you and I live in the day of the side hustle becoming the hustle. Right?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, isn't it crazy?
The side hustle is really, whenever I hear that term, I think side hustle is one of the coolest terms I've ever met or ever heard. And the reason I think it's so cool is what it's really saying, sub rosa. You don't hear it, but this is what it's really saying. This is what I'd be doing if I could. Like, this is what I'd be doing full time.
And I say that all the time. I say it all the time.
And so a side
health
hustle.
Insurance, man. The health insurance is killing me.
Oh my God, Regan. Your guests can't see it, but I'm toasting you right now.
Absolutely. If I knew you had a beer, I would have grabbed the beer myself.
Yeah.
I got
so
water.
Anyway, yeah, no, the health insurance, baby. I hear you. So nevertheless, when you have your daughter involved in something that's your side hustle, but it's your passion, and they get to see you at work, what they develop in their water, what they start to feel is it's okay to experiment and explore. It's okay to chase your passions. It's okay. You don't have to choose between this and that. You can do both. You can exist in the world and pay your bills and work for somebody else and do a good job, but you can also express yourself and try these other tangents. And I think it's incredibly, in the day and age we live in, where everything is about the pivot. You got to pivot from this to that, and you got to accommodate a new technology, and you have to be adept at, in the Darwinian sense, adapt to a new environment. It's really good for kids to see that doesn't overwhelm you. Instead, it inspires you.
I agree, and I see that. Unfortunately, as a society, we haven't been tested very much. So I worry that my kids will not be as quick to adapt.
Oh, they'll be faster than we are.
But we say that with technology and stuff right now. But what if everything shifted 20 degrees to the left?
Hey, on that score, if we go back to your statement about the Egyptians, 1,000 years, and the father passes down to his son the very same tools and techniques, it's going to serve him well. It makes you seem like you know everything. And then we live in a world where technology is changing so fast that the skill
we get left
sets
behind. We get left behind.
Well, it's like, okay, so I have a very, very good friend who I admire a tremendous amount. He started a recording studio in Hollywood, and he was a magician at the control panel. This guy could fiddle the buttons like nobody's business. The problem is that skill set, that adept mastery of a technology, he knows it's going to be obsolete in 6 months when the plugins or the system is going to completely change. He's got to be able to learn how to play the piano and then recognize the piano is not going to be used in 14 months. We're going to switch to something else. And this is new. The idea that mastery of a technology is simply not going to be your defining advantage anymore. The defining advantage for any young person is going to be adaptability, their ability to pivot, their ability to change, their ability to absorb a new tech, their ability to learn a new language. And in those cases, and we go back to the idea of like 100-year-old books, yes, but some things will remain. Some things will always be true. And among those things is something I'm trying to convince people of right now. Storytelling is an ancient art. It may be even the first art, and it will always exist. And despite ChatGPT's ability to produce very, very good copy, it does so by aggregating the average. In other words, anything
what's already pre-existing, and it only pulls from what's pre-existing.
Right, exactly. You've got it. Which means it's not going to come up with anything new unless they figure out some way to.
Well, they will, and that's one of the reasons.
They probably
why.
will.
Yeah, I got a good reason why that's going to happen the way it's going to happen. But I want to go back to the way you were saying that we used to specialize in something, and now it becomes obsolete in 2 weeks or 6 months or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's one way to kind of stave off that issue a little bit. It's reciprocity. I work with you, you work with me. If you specialize in something and it keeps evolving, but you focus on that, and I focus on this and it evolves, and I follow it, I can use your talent as you grow, and I can use my talent as I grow, and I don't have to specialize in editing and audio and all those things. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
I do.
There's still that effort where if young people can learn to network properly, which is a lost art in and of itself, not just the communication, but learning how to work together with somebody, especially if someone's not the same age group or someone doesn't have the same views as you. Those are the ones that are probably got the gap that you need to fill more than anybody else.
I think you may be right. I think that there's a premium on being a good teammate.
Yeah, man. Because I don't know if it was you that touched on it or someone else touched on it, where it was, I think it was you.
Yeah, the 1980 Olympic hockey team.
Yeah. You're like,
pick the right players.
When the zombie apocalypse comes, I don't want the slower guy. I want the guy that's going to work with me, even if we're both a little bit slower.
Well, there's the great thing about Herb Brooks when he got charge of that 1980 Olympic hockey team was he made one. He recognized something, and this is true of all great coaches. They have to confront the truth. And the truth was, if you're going to play a juggernaut like the Finns or the Czechs or the Soviets, You have to recognize they've been drawing on a talent pool that is vastly bigger than yours. And they've been playing together for years. So they have the talent, they have a talent advantage, and they've got a system advantage. The only way I will beat them is by not playing their game. This isn't a talent game. This is a teamwork game. They're not going to be ready for a team that is willing to die for one another in order to play our game as a team sport. There were no prima donnas on the 1980 Olympic team, not one. They were chosen for their ability not to be a prima donna, to dish the puck and protect each other and defend one another. And the Soviets simply weren't ready for this. The idea that they're not playing anything resembling our game. How do you deal with that? And
it's too late once you realize what you're playing.
Yeah,
it's too late.
Right. Right. By the time you recognize what's going on, you can't adapt. But and I think, again, you've put your finger on something really quite profound, which is in this upcoming age, the advantage that we have as human beings over AI is our ability to cooperate. Ooh. And I think it's an underestimated talent. Think about what our news media and our general media is doing. If you think about these shows, whether it's The Bachelor or whether it was The Apprentice, or what they do is they set people in competition with one another and they eliminate them slowly until there's one last man standing. So that the message is, whatever you have to do to be the last man standing, this is how you win. And that is not real life. Real life is not that at all.
No.
Real life, right? Real life is you don't throw anybody under the bus. You pull people along with you, inspire people to bring you more than they think they're capable of. You support them. You help them. Among the chimpanzees, chimpanzees are deadly. Have you been following these things about how dangerous chimps are? Oh my God.
And they have a hierarchy.
Right. They do. But what they've discovered from chimp hierarchy is just because you're a badass and you're bigger and badder than everybody else, we'll kill you.
Yeah, three of us will rip you to
three
pieces.
Of us, you're on 3 times as strong as us. And chimps are brutal. It is a prison general population in the chimp kingdom. And the one thing that all the zoologists walk away with is, you better be very careful if you're the head of that chimpanzee tribe. You better be very careful to make sure that you take care of others, because they will. You turn your back, they'll kill you.
Reciprocity, man.
Reciprocity,
man. It's there.
Regan's
man.
on it.
It's there. Yeah. It's there more than people realize.
It
on
is.
that note, we got to come back. Let me call you back. We were talking about the chimpanzees.
Yeah. The deadliness of the chimp. Oh my God, they're dangerous.
Yeah, it's wild. And
wicked and vicious.
We don't know anything about ourselves. We think we know, and they try to do these tests with mice and rats, and you hear all these stories about how they get them to do all these things, but in reality, we don't know nearly anything.
Well, that's, again, to go back to the 100-year-old books. If you go back to the old stuff, whether it's the Stoics and it's Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or Socrates, those are the things that will in fact reveal, because they're so old. If it's still true, it will always be true.
Yeah, I don't watch the news at all, and I actually use that metaphor myself. I'll say, if I hear it at work 3 times over a month or 2, then I'll consider it real news. Otherwise, I'm not going to worry about killer bees or someone's emails.
Right on.
Or any, you know what I mean?
That's good advice.
Well, not only that, but are you really going to hate on your family at the dinner table because we disagree on something that some guy at a news station that doesn't care about you at all?
You got to run for office, Regan. I'm voting for you. That's some good wisdom. That's some good wisdom. You are dead right, because people are profiting off our division. And I've had experiences where, oh, by the way, something I think you'd find really interesting, which is on my social media, I post a lot. I post pretty much once a week to TikTok, and I get the nicest comments. And what I've noticed is that the comments come at me from all kinds of different perspectives. So I'll get clearly red state and clearly blue state, and they all have the same kind of sense of, hey, that's really nice thought, right? In other words, I'm getting I'm getting lots of good feedback from both red state, blue state. And I'm thinking, oh, this, see what this proves to me? This proves to me that we really are not that far apart. We're like this close. And the only reason we think we're far apart is because somebody's telling us we are, but
Yeah.
that's not real.
Well, I don't think people realize this. Not only are we only arguing about 1%, we're not arguing about the color of the sky.
Right.
We're not.
Right.
We're not arguing about how many leaves are on the tree. We're not arguing about the tide, when is it going to be high tide or low tide. We're arguing about these little minute details
Yeah.
of almost irrelevant topics when you
Yeah.
look at them from a lens of last year. And it goes even further. We also have this, like, we dig in so deep on these beliefs. People don't realize that most of your beliefs are way shallower than you realize. You could go to college
Yeah.
and write a paper or a dissertation on something you disagree with and change your own mind. As if your shallow opinion, was way shallower than you thought, and you're willing to not be friends over two shallow opinions that oppose each other that someone else came up with. And I'm supposed to base my entire dinner at Thanksgiving on that.
Regan, I'm telling you,
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Congressman Gorno, I'm voting for you, baby. Because what the observation you're making is significant for two really important reasons. One, I find it very appealing because I think you're accurate. I think you're right. But the second reason I find your hypothesis, your proposition appealing, is because what you're suggesting is, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting worried and worked up about stuff that does not matter. You need to return to something more fundamental.
Well, and if you're busy, you're not in the moment.
Well put. I don't know how we connected, but however it was.
You're glitching on me, buddy. You're glitching on me.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, you're freezing
I
up
should
on
turn
me.
off my video. Should restore momentarily.
Yeah.
Does this help at all? If
I hear you fine. I'd rather the video with it so I can bounce off your.
Yeah. Am I back? Am I not frozen anymore?
Okay,
Still
you look
frozen.
a little bit. Yeah, you're still frozen. Yeah, your internet connection is unusable. I don't know if that's you or me, but I look like I'm fine.
Yeah, chances are it's at my end. We're experiencing a lot of meteorological BS out here in California right now.
Okay. Do you want to just go with what we got? Let's just go with what we got.
Well, we can keep going and maybe see if we can survive it.
As long as the audio keeps going, I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
All right. Well, do you want to change speeds, or do you want to keep going down that rabbit hole?
Well, you tell me what's a perfect program for you. Like, what do you want to talk about, and we'll go there.
Well, we can come back later. The thing that got me, the one thing you did that was that made me say, I got to talk to this guy. I got to at least see if he's going to be open to talking to me, is your story about climbing that cliff after your family got into an argument. You were just exhausted and tired, and you almost fell 3/4 of the way up. That story, you were in that moment. I keep coming back to it. Since that day I heard that story, I've reflected on that concept several times, because there is times where you're madly in love, and that emotional chemistry, it may be explainable in something stupid, but would you ever deny? It's like denying pain itself. Why would you ever deny it? I don't understand. And like you said, that guy, he may be smart, but he's missing the boat.
To be fair to him, his analysis of this is one of the great tragedies of knowing too much, is that you're eager to share your knowledge, right? So what happens is he listens to my story, and when I told the story of surviving this, I for all intents and purposes, 1 inch to the left or right on my hand sticking out, and I was going to be dead. And not only dead, Regan, but undiscovered for weeks, right? Because there's no way they were going to know where the hell I was. I went miles, all by myself. So never hike in the wilderness by yourself. That's lesson 1.
Yeah, we got a couple movies that prove that.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that's the first thing. But 1 inch to the left or to the right, and I'm a dead man. So I'm sitting there knowing that, completely conscious of that. And what happened then was a moment of recognition of the beauty of everything. The way that will often happen to people who have a near-death experience or a close brush, they'll suddenly, their food tastes better, and the sound of the wind suddenly becomes a very significant thing. That was the moment I was in. When I described all of that with all of its lyrical beauty and my poetic, interpretation of it, this neuroscientist said, "Well, you know, uh, don't be too quick to attach mystical meaning to all of this because there's a physiological explanation to how you felt." Okay, so he's not wrong.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
I'm sure he's correct, but what he's missing is what my Indian friend understood, which is the source of your revelation is not germane. It doesn't matter what the origin is of it. All that matters is, what does your experience teach you? How do you orient the world differently now that you've had it? Does it, if there's any one rule I'm trying to live by now that I've internalized now at this age, it's leave stuff better than you found it. Leave the meeting better than you found it. Leave the Zoom call better than you found it. When you were, I'll give you a great example of that. My brother-in-law, Mike, he's an engineer by training and by orientation. He's just an engineer. He solves problems. That's his deal. He'll figure it out. We were in rural Colorado. We were going to some stupid place to go hit some golf balls. It was one of these, 3-story tall driving ranges. He couldn't wait to get out there. We decide we're going to get a couple of energy drinks or something like that at one of these little mini marts. So we pull into this gas station, and here are these two gals. I think they're about 19, and they've got a flat on their little Nissan, and they're trying to undo the nuts on their wheel without jacking the car up. So my brother-in-law sees this, and he's not having it, right? So for the next 40 minutes, not only does he help fix that flat and put on the spare and he gives them he helps them cobble together a repair system filled with duct tape and a broom handle so that they can attach that to their jack thing to make it easier under, you know what I mean? In other words, he doesn't just help them fix that flat. He explains, this is how you deal with this problem. Here's how, here, you must always make sure that you're doing this on the level. You don't want to jack the car up and have it pitch over. You don't want to create unsafe. And he would drill them. That's what holy mackerel, Regan. I don't know whether it was 40 minutes or an hour and a half. My brother-in-law apologizes to me at one time. "Gee, I'm sorry, we're missing the golf." And I'm like, "Mike, I am having more fun right now watching you work these gals than I ever would have had playing golf, because what you're demonstrating to me is something so cool, so badass, which is I am going to leave these two gals better than I found them. I'm not just going to fix their tire. I'm going to equip them to know how to do this and know how to solve problems by cobbling together tools they don't have with duct tape and T-shirts and water bottles." Do you know what I mean? It was a master class in how to teach somebody something. And I felt so improved, so giddy with the feeling we might make it after that experience, that I thought to myself, that's a life's mission. Whoever you encounter and whatever you encounter, leave it better than you found it. And that to me was, like I think that's kind of like a parent's job too, right? You want to leave your kids with lessons you wish you'd known earlier.
And there's so many.
Oh, yeah, they never end, do they? Yeah.
If I could, and not only that, I think that's why it's so frustrating to watch them learn the hard way, is because you're kind of living your life again.
Yeah.
You're literally, and you're like, why aren't you listening to me? Okay, I got to step back because this is going to be one of those ones where you have to learn it this way. If you say it
it's
twice,
hard to watch them. Yeah. It's hard to watch them take knocks, but but there is an advantage to getting a couple of bruises and bumps and scars along the way. It's very instructive, and
Yeah.
oh boy,
And if you're there when they need you, and you don't say "I told you so,"
yeah,
sometimes they look back at it 5 years later and are like, "Wow, you were right."
yeah,
And
they
that's
hear
an
every word you
epiphany.
say.
And I'll be honest with you. You touched on something that was similar to that a minute ago, and I'm trying to think of what it was, and I should have wrote it down, but it was something to the effect of not just learning something the easy way. Shoot, I wish I wrote it down. You had a really good topic that you brought up, and I wanted to go down that aisle a little bit, and I forgot. Son of a gun.
Well, Lord knows we could probably talk for another couple of hours. You're good at this, Regan. Um, the If I could make another comment about this idea of like leaving stuff better than you found it. Um, I want to talk about a motto that I saw in the headquarters of Anheuser-Busch when I used to work on the Budweiser business. And you walk into the St. Louis headquarters, big brass letters, it says, "Making friends is our business." And I thought
Smart.
that was, oh God, how smart is that? It's it's smart for a bunch of reasons, but I didn't really fully appreciate its meaning and its importance until we were in a meeting with August Bush III. August Bush III was a very charismatic, but a very, very hard charging, hard boss. He was a demanding boss. This is not to say he was a bad man. On the contrary, he was demanding, but he was fair. That was his reputation. I didn't know him very well, but I presented to him a couple of times in a meeting where I was presenting. I wasn't presenting until the very end, but in the medium time, he was listening to a presentation from somebody who was talking about shelf space in supermarkets. And this guy got up and he gave a presentation where he was talking about ways that they could sort of muscle the supermarkets into giving them more shelf space. And it was careful language, but it seemed like they were trying to extort them. Do you know what I mean? Like it was quite clear that this guy was prepared to push to the point of unethical behavior. And August Bush III, with these ice blue eyes, locks eyes without blinking with this guy and says, "That doesn't sound very friendly to me. That doesn't sound like you're trying to make a friend. Can you explain this again to me through the lens of how are you going to make friends with this person?" I thought, oh my God, he's real. It's real.
Yeah.
They really believe it. Holy shit, these people will be unstoppable. Well, eventually they wound up, merging with Ambev and all of that stuff. But I was so impressed that they lived, at least for that day, they lived that motto. And I thought, ooh, that's a good business to be in. Making friends is our business. Like, going out there in the world to make relationships.
Authentically. Authentically. Yeah, which is how we started this whole conversation.
Yeah, yeah. You can't do otherwise. You kind of have to be your real self. If you're going to have a really long lasting relationship, it kind of has to come from a real place.
Yeah. Well, when you start peeling back that onion, there has to be something more intriguing, and lies don't come that way.
Yeah, there's only so long you can keep up a
Yeah, you got to prop them
facade.
up, and there's no layers to them.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder.
That's no way to live.
And it's not no way to live either. Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
What are you looking at?
unfortunately, though, we are living in a society where the truth is getting smaller and smaller and weaker. And
Yeah, you reckon it's going to pendulum back? I reckon it will.
I think it doesn't have a choice. You can't bend reality forever.
Right? No, that's a fact. They
Yeah,
learned that
'cause
again.
it
and
will,
again.
it will snap you in the face.
Every
just,
warlord learns it in the end. Yeah,
yeah, that's like dying by the sword kind of thing. If
right.
you try to be that dominant monkey under circumstances where you can't be the dominant monkey, you're gonna have
Yeah,
to do unethical things or lie or something. And then when it snaps back, they're gonna rip your arms off.
yeah. There's a great poem by Ogden Nash. It's a short poem, and it goes, "There are only two ways to live on this terrestrial ball: have all of your conscience or none at all." And the those without conscience, yeah, the chimpanzees bite your arms off. Um, there's only you got to have your conscience. You got to be able to, especially with somebody like you or me, Regan. I grew up in a family of three girls, and then I was the last. and your son is the last with five
Is
girls.
it?
Is it
Yeah,
five
yeah.
girls?
Yeah, it took
Okay.
6 tries, man. It took six
Yeah.
tries.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my dad's attitude. So when you grow up in a family where you got three older sisters, or in your son's case where he's got five older sisters, he's going to have a very interesting attitude towards women. And it's gonna they'll all have their separate identities, right? Five girls, they're all going to be different, and they're all going to have separate personalities. And what he's going to learn early that most men don't learn is that every single woman is an individual, and it's going to serve him well when he's an adult. It's going to serve him badly when he's a teenager, um, because teenage girls are still trying to find out who they are, and they don't know what they think. And so, for a young man who's grown up with older sisters, he's going to naturally default to respecting women. This is a problem when you're 14. It's fantastic when you're 20.
Yeah.
You know, it's especially fantastic if you've been married for a while. Can I ask you a question? Did you marry a woman? How many brothers or sisters did you have growing up?
I had one sister, a little sister.
And okay, so you were the first child, and you were a boy. Okay, and your wife, what was her sibling situation?
It was a little confusing because it was there's some stepdad and stuff like that. So I think she had two older brothers and an older sister.
Okay, all right. So she was all right. So you're an eldest child, and she's a youngest child, and you had one younger sister, and she had older brothers. So what happens, I believe, is that they have a natural feeling for expectations. And I think good matches are made from people who grow up understanding the other side of the argument. And
That makes perfect sense.
yeah, and my wife, for example, she grew up with two older brothers, or, she grew up with brothers, and I grew up with sisters. And it was just kind of painless when we first moved in together. It was like, yeah, okay, this is how this works. Of course.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I'm used to this rodeo. This is not my first rodeo. And I think there's something very instructive from that, which is that for Americans, I want to go back to something you said before about sort of like division and how close we are and so forth. I do think that if we can grant each other enough grace to assume we're not bad, then even opinions that may drive you up the wall, you only become curious about how they arrived at that. You're not judging them on their opinions. You're just curious about why they think that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think we're going to pendulum back into accommodating one another.
It would be the greatest thing that ever happened.
I think Americans underestimate Americans.
I think we underestimate ourselves in general.
I do. I think Canadians are very proud of being Canadians. I think Americans underestimate how awesome it is to be an American. And I don't mean it because we're a military power, and I don't mean it because we're an economic power, and I don't mean it because English is the dominant language of the world and we're participants in that, language diaspora. I don't mean that. What I mean is Americans are lovable. Despite whatever politics we may have, the national character is we are helpful and curious and lovable and generous. And Australians are the same way. New Zealanders are the same way. Canadians are the same way. They're generous, fun-loving, goofy, sometimes ignorant, but willing to bend to fit. My experience, I lived for a couple of years in Hong Kong, and I was surprised at how Americans were regarded as magnificent tourists. Like everybody loved it when the Americans showed up. And I'm thinking, well, sure, because they're throwing money around. Nope, it wasn't that. You know what it was? Americans were more likely to want to learn the local language. They usually showed up better prepared with their phrase books, and they wanted to find out how everybody else lived with this kind of goofball country bumpkin. Like, how y'all doing? Like, what do you call this?
That's great, though. That's great, man. Because you have to be the fool before you can be the master.
I think isn't that a beautiful thing to go in and acknowledge? Like, I know I don't know everything. You
Well,
know what
no,
they
no, that
didn't?
means you have a new adventure.
Absolutely.
If your
That's the
old
best kind of
adventure is
traveler.
over or your old adventure is getting old, you've got a brand new opportunity to start almost from scratch.
Yeah.
And your
And
body changes, your mind changes, and that's another important thing that you were touching on when you were talking about Americans and stuff. And this is a human thing in general. Is other people have an opposing opinion and you don't like it, so you shut down. The only person that loses in that moment right there is you.
yeah, it's you.
You're the
You're
only
blowing
one
it.
that lost. They didn't lose
Exactly.
anything. And
Little,
it's such a
yeah.
huge mistake. It's such a huge mistake.
Little curiosity goes a long way. Hey, so we could go on for hours as far as I'm concerned. You just have to rein me in, but I've got a bunch more I wanted to say. So you
Go
just tell me
ahead,
real
man.
quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Daily Standard, one of their newspapers, ran a survey for Southeast Asian. There are a lot of expats over in Hong Kong. New Zealanders and Canadians and English, Germans and what have you. I was really surprised how many Dutchmen were there. But anyway, they did a survey among the residents of Hong Kong of every description about who were the world's best lovers. Okay. You're like Italians, French, German, English, and so on and so on. So make a prediction of all of the nationalities. There were 21 listed. Who was best? Who were the best lovers in the world?
Under the topic of discussion, Americans.
Americans and Australians were tied for first.
No kidding. Okay.
And this made the French and the Italians just go, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. No, it wasn't. And here was why. Because they didn't just describe where we fell in the rankings. It was why. Why were we regarded as world best lovers? And here was the analysis. The Australians were regarded as the best lovers because they were game for anything. Like they were up for anything. And the Americans were, quote, relentless self-improvers.
That's fantastic. I would have never guessed those analyses.
Isn't that fantastic? But it totally fits the national character.
I agree.
We were inventors of the self-help book. We're the ones who are always measuring our progress, and we're always trying to do better. Well, guess what? That's not an accident, man. That's who we are.
There's still hope. There's still hope, man.
There totally is. We don't give ourselves enough credit for trying to get better. When you look back at our history, there's some nastiness in our history.
Yeah, there's some dark times. There is. But we've always come back.
But we've always improved. We've always fixed it. It takes a long time, but we will fix it because eventually the good side of America fixes the bad side of America. And I wish people would recognize that, whatever our problems are, we will get through them. You got to lighten up. You have to loosen up. And by the way, another piece of trivia for you. I come from the industry of persuasion. So I studied persuasion like a son of a gun. Do you know what I found out was the quality of the most persuasive people? This is fantastic. The most persuasive people were the ones most willing to be persuaded. Okay. In other words, if I signal to you that I'm willing to change my mind, remember your reciprocity thing?
Well, it triggers other people to do the same.
Exactly.
No kidding. I would have predicted disagreeability. Someone that's disagreeable would eventually make other people capitulate. No, but it makes more sense. It makes more sense because working together, is a far better strategy, and it seems to be a theme that goes around. You see it in religious text. You see it in literature. Yeah,
you beat me to the punchline, Regan. That's it. What you just said is it in a nutshell. You show me somebody who will cheat somebody to make a sale. I'll show you a failure eventually.
Because it snaps back. It snaps back.
It's going to snap back on you. Karma's going to hit you. Is going to high five you in the face with a chair.
Sounds miserable. And not only that, but I think the vast majority of us know that it's coming. Because, think about it this way, right? Would you go and sit at the dinner table with your kids and tell them lie, cheat, and steal, it'll be fine?
Well, come on.
Nobody would. Nobody. Why would nobody tell someone that advice? Because we know deep down, even though we do it, we know it's a bad idea. And that it's going to smack us in the face. We know it's going to.
it's a losing strategy.
Yeah,
It's an
definitely long
automatically.
term, especially long term.
I saw with my own eyes a case where this guy was getting picked on in a service environment. And the revenge that was wreaked on his behalf did not come from him. It came from the most unexpected source. This woman in her 50s who had gotten sort of maternal about this young guy who was on the spectrum. And because he was on the autism spectrum, he kind of wasn't aware of like the way that people were riding on him. She'd had about enough. And, you know, the Russians have that saying that revenge is best. It's a dish best served cold. And oh my God, she was biblical and completely
terrible.
anonymous.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was a horror show of revenge. And there's no way they were going to trace it back to her. And it was so diabolical that I looked at that and I went, oh my Lord, see, this goes to show you, you think you're free, you think you're off the hook, you better go through life with a clear conscience, baby, because 5 years from now, this is going to come back at you. And you won't know why, but it's going to hit you harder, compound interest. And so you can't go through life. You need to go through life like Anheuser-Busch. Making friends is our business.
Yeah. She sounds epic, man. She sounds epic.
She was a lovely, lovely person who had no patience for bullies. And you know how, like they say, don't go near a bear cub because if the mom gets hold of you,
the mom will maul you.
yeah, it's all she wrote. And that's how this gal was. You made the mistake of doing something to somebody she felt maternal over. She didn't give a crap, about A, scale, and B, responsibility. She was gonna visit Deuteronomy on you.
That's great, man. Oof. I think everybody likes that that story.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't end on such a dark note.
No, we shouldn't go down that road.
Yeah, for sure.
Why don't we go back to that chat GPT?
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by it. I haven't touched it yet because I'm afraid to get lazy.
No. It's a fantastic tool, like a lot of tools. And what it will allow you to do is to explore the knowledge of the web in such a way. The advantage that it has is essentially, in a nutshell, this is how I see it. Forgive me for perhaps botching it. If you go on Google and you search something out, Google will spit out a series of citations. It's like, okay, you could go here for the answer, you could go here for the answer, you could go here for the answer, and so on. It's thousands of possible answers. ChatGPT will essentially, in real language, say, here's your answer. Like it doesn't give you links, it gives you your answer. So if you were to say on ChatGPT, you put in, please write a scope of work for a consultation, let's say a presentation skills clinic for 10 people that lasts 2 days and costs approximately this, and it involves 5 modules that will be useful for making people better presenters. If I type that in, it's going to spit me out, and it's going to spit it out in about 10 seconds. It's going to spit me out a scope of work. And as a tool, what that does is it says, look, this would take you a couple hours to put together on your own. The beauty of this is I'm simply aggregating the knowledge of the web to say, this is kind of how this is done. Now you put your own spin on it. So I believe that there's a tremendous added value for the marketplace because people will now take boilerplate experiences, boilerplate answers, and they will add value.
Okay.
And it will take less time.
So how do you do it? Do you have to download anything? I just looked at a few things and watched a couple of videos. And
you just go to literally type in ChatGPT into your browser. It will probably give you, I'm going to do it right now in real time so that we kind of have a sense about how this goes. So I type that in and it's chat.openai.com. And then it will allow you to sign up and you can create an account. And then once you have done that, it will, in very, very simple and, there's a simple field that you type into and you have your query or your um, please spit me out a 10-day plan for a live event that is going to happen in um, you know, Sheridan, Wyoming, in the middle of February. Give me a 10-day plan for planning for this event with a probable audience of 50. And it just, there you go. Here it is. It's a starting point.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
gives
yeah.
you a starting point.
Yeah, but
And then
it cuts out a lot of the work, you know.
it cuts out an enormous amount of work, and it gives you essentially what the web is agreeing is kind of the standard for this.
So I'm going to be honest with you, Neil. If you would have been my first episode, you would have been very disappointed in my ability to communicate and play this out.
I doubt that.
Not only that, but it was only.
I think you got an instinct for it reading, so I doubt that.
But I listened to my own cringy stuff at the beginning, and I'm like, I have to keep it here because this is how it started. I have to keep it here. But boy, I would love to just get rid of it because it sounds so bad, and I just. But my point is, though, going through the fire and the experience of this, and I still doing it with paperwork and stuff, I feel like if I cheat too much, I would lose all those experiences that got me to this conversation.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I don't know. See, that's what
ChatGPT is here to stay. It will only get better. And the people that will
adapt.
there's going to be
go further.
Yeah, exactly. You just grab hold of it and you use it like a tool, and the next thing you know, you're participating in something fantastic.
Well, I can ask so many questions, though. I could be like, okay, let's make a 30-day planner so I can double my views. I could also say,
it'll do that.
I know, isn't that crazy? So now I'm doing someone else's thoughts.
But I will tell you that these things are, it has the limitations of as I say, it's the boilerplate, it's the standard of the right. And I had one of the best compliments I ever got was from a guy on TikTok. He's quite an accomplished TikToker. His specialty is helping companies do digital marketing through content creation. That's his specialty. But he's an engineer, and he's very much an analyst. And he invited me for coffee, and I thought, hey, fantastic, because I'm a big fan of his. We got together for coffee. His first line to me was, "You should not be any kind of success on TikTok. You're breaking every rule. You're doing everything wrong. And you've got 250,000 followers. What the F?"
Yeah.
Right? That's why he wanted to get together, is he goes, "You break every rule, and I don't get it." And I thought,
you don't care. No, I've noticed if you don't care, the rules don't really matter.
You kind of have to accept that as any kind of content creators. You go, look, I'm just doing it for my tribe, man. I'm not doing it for everybody. I'm just doing it for my tribe. And I can chase your stupid guidelines on how to get 1 million followers, and it would be a soulless exercise of me trying to catch up with a 19-year-old who's 50 times better at that. I'm going to deploy what I'm good at, which is, I mean it. It's coming from a place of affection, and I just want to leave the room better than I found it. Even if I fail, I can't fail.
It's a great philosophy. And I'll be honest with you, man. You're a natural storyteller. You were designed. Oh yeah, you were designed. And we're competing with people that don't have a lot of experience, that don't have a lot of knowledge, they don't have the days before cell phones to draw from. So you have no idea. It's almost as if we don't have to follow the rules.
There's
you know what I'm saying? Theoretical.
I hear you. I think that there's such a benefit to just being you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the authentic part also gives a lot of credence to everything, and it's hard to find sometimes. It's really hard to find. I don't know why that is, and original thought is hard to find, and I think that's always been the case. But nonetheless, seeing someone say something they truly mean has in and of itself a certain amount of value.
Yeah. I do have one advantage that a 25-year-old doesn't have, is I've lived a long time.
Yeah, how old are you, man? Neil, how old are you?
I'm 60.
Are you 60? Okay, yeah, you got some years on me too. Okay, I'm 44.
Yeah. So the benefit of that is that stuff's happened to you, and you didn't even realize what the benefits of some of the things that you have. It's a Zen story about the Zen master, Chinese farmer, gets a horse for his son. Everybody says, "Oh, that's wonderful." He says, "We'll see." The son breaks his leg rather badly, falling off the horse. Everybody goes, "Oh, what a tragedy." He goes, "We'll see." Then along comes a warlord, and he's taking up young men to go fight a war, and the son can't go because he's broken his legs. And everybody goes, "That's wonderful." And he goes, "Well, we'll see," and so on and so on. You never know when some experience that you've had, which you thought was bad, or some embarrassment that you endured, you thought was the low point of your life, and it turns out to be a great gift in the end. Living a long time gives you the benefit of having enough experiences that seemed quite awful at the time and wound up being informative. And what's more, by telling them to other people, they benefit without having to go through the same suffering.
Which is a
That's kind
gift
of
in and
where
of itself, man. It's so
Yeah.
much. I find it very pleasing to be able to have someone skip that pitfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I'm at right now, anyway.
Yeah, man. And you've got the opportunity to reach everybody.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing about social media is I'll put something up on LinkedIn or I'll put it on TikTok. Next thing you know, it's got 1,000,005 views.
And,
Damn.
and you're talking to some guy outside of San Antonio.
Yeah, see, exactly. And yet, weirdly, Regan, we're sort of kindred spirits. I mean, I can tell that like in the first 10 minutes. It's like, oh man, this is my guy. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Of all of the great tragedies of warfare, this is perhaps the most heartbreaking, is that you know that if you were to ever kill somebody, I'll bet you would have been friends. Like whether they were Vietnamese or German or Iraqi or Afghan,
Yeah.
you probably would have been friends.
Yeah, we're
And
way
that's
closer. We're way closer than we think.
way closer. And most people are the same. And it's just tragic.
Yeah, it's exhausting to think that other men have to die for a political purpose or for land or for
Yeah.
squabbles. They're just squabblings. Again,
Yeah.
who if you were to scratch the surface of those fights, would they be so shallow they wouldn't even be worth the fight?
It always winds up being some selfish douche. It's I had this pitch. I teach presentation skills, as sort of kind of my main hustle now. And this is the sales pitch I give. I go, okay, hey, listen, I'm going to give you your choice of 4 superpowers. 1, super strength. You can lift rail cars like they're styrofoam. 2, the power of flight. At any point on a whim, you can simply leap into the sky and fly as fast as a jet. Number 3, invisibility. You can completely go invisible and walk amongst us humans completely unseen. Or 4, physically, you are the same as you are now, but you have the ability to change people's minds. Which would you? Did we just go another 40 minutes?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Holy shit, Regan.
I know I love this conversation.
We're killing it.
Yeah, we're killing it. So, okay. I don't want to ruin this because I really like this. 4 superpowers. You asked me which one I wanted.
I'll start again. Oh,
go ahead.
Should I start again or just?
Well, no, I think I could just paste it right in with my answer.
All right. So if you had the ability to change people's minds, you could do anything that those other superpowers could do because you could get anybody to help you. And what
that's
people
profound. Wow.
Yeah,
you went right back to
anywhere
working
you
together.
Anywhere, yes, exactly. Anywhere you want to go, jump on a plane. Anyone you are interested in, you can attract an attractive stranger. You can talk your way out of a Russian prison. You can make any business sale. And with the power, this is the part where it's sort of mind blowing. If you really were a persuasive person, you could finally convince people how close they were to one another. You could finally make that singular and most important sale. We're all in this together. If I was king of the universe for a day, here's what I would do. I would build into the system software so that everybody recognizes it. You are not alone, and you are not meant to live alone. You are meant to go on this adventure together. And the fastest way that you can get comrades and make friends is by offering your friendship to other people. My brother-in-law, when he helps those 2 young gals, he is the great beneficiary. It looks like they're the ones that win. No. My brother-in-law, Mike, he's the one who wins.
The whole
because
world wins a little bit. The whole world
yeah,
wins.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does a little bit. The whole world wins. And he starts this cycle. But Mike knows that he's being useful. And I don't think a man takes any greater joy in the universe than being useful. And
The only thing greater than that is appreciation.
yeah, I think that if you know you're being useful, nobody needed to tell Mike, Mike, you're doing a good thing. Mike, you were really useful. He knows. He knows perfectly well that he left those two gals better off than he found them. And that they're going to go back and they're going to tell the whole story and they're going to show their dad the crazy PVC pipe that he duct taped to the jack handle. You know, like they're going to show him the whole thing. This guy did this thing. Wow, that's fantastic. You know, or their brother or whatever. And what happens is that they go, you know what? Maybe human beings aren't so bad. Maybe there was just some great stranger out there who turned out to be kind of typical if you really look at it. And there's a distinction between, they say, Los Angelinos and New Yorkers. They go, Angelinos will say, oh, you got a flat tire. Oh, that's so bad, man. What a drag. Hey, man, have peace. Have a great day. New Yorkers will go, move over. Let me fix this. You know, it's like they seem like they're being kind of douchey, but in fact, they're the ones that are going to leap in and fix your problem. Come on. How the hell did you get into this situation? What's it? It's a nail? Come on. A half-size spare? That's not a real spare. But meanwhile, they're getting their suit, ruined from fixing the flat for you. And I've always loved that about New Yorkers and Texans and, is this attitude towards, I'm not just going to leave you stranded on the side of the road. You know, that's not going to happen. It's not in my playbook. And I really want to go out there into the world and remind people, you know what? 8 out of 10 times, people aren't going to leave you stranded. And it's not, and by the way, just a kind of side note, I don't know if you can put this in your podcast, but these two gals were not what I would call great beauties. Okay. And why that's significant is, pretty privilege. Megan Fox breaks down on the side of the road. It's going to be 18 seconds before somebody stops to help her fix that car. But if you're not a beautiful woman, you could be waiting there a long time. Mike doesn't give a fly. He doesn't care. He's just a good hombre. And he sees two gals that are out of their depth with a flat. I mean, picture it, Regan. You can just see it, right?
It sounds exhausting, yeah.
Right? You can see him trying to pull the nuts off of this thing without jacking the car up. And you're like, oh, no, this is headed for disaster. So he just couldn't help himself. Mike's just too good a dude. And,
that's awesome.
He leaves the whole world better off. And I think most men are actually like that. Most men want to leave the world. They want to be useful.
Yeah.
And maybe the great tragedy of technological progress is that it happens so fast. You can get left on the side of the road without feeling like you matter. And simply not true. You do matter. You do matter to somebody. And,
you matter to a lot more people than you realize.
Yeah.
Oh.
I would really like to spread that evangel out there and just say, hey, man, don't for a second think you're not useful. You're useful to somebody. And, Danny Trejo, that actor? He plays bad guys in movies.
Danny Trejo, I'm not sure.
Danny Trejo's the guy who's got he just looks like he spent a bunch of time in prison.
Okay.
And he was in Breaking Bad, and he was in the movie.
Yes, the Spanish guy. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yes.
So Danny Trejo, he spent a good chunk of time in San Quentin, and he was an alcoholic, and after he got out of the joint, he went to AA, and he became really, really big in AA. And in AA, it's very much about like trying to help other people, and you become somebody's sponsor and you help them deal with the fact they've got an addiction problem. Trejo says that when he started to be good to other people, when he started to care more about other people's problems than his own, all of a sudden, all kinds of crazy things started happening. So an example was he was on a movie set, and he'd gone down to the movie set because a PA, a production assistant who had a cocaine problem, said, Danny, you got to come down. You got to help me because coke is flying all over this set. And I need you to come down here and make sure I don't do anything stupid or I'll have a relapse and I'm screwed. So Trio goes, oh, great. The last thing I need right now is to go down there and help this kid. But God dang it, I will. He goes down there and he's helping this kid sort of navigate this. And one of the assistant director, somebody sees him and they go, oh man, this guy's look is awesome. And the director comes up to Danny and goes, hey, listen, I was thinking of having you maybe be an extra in this shot. Do you think you could convincingly portray somebody who's been in prison? And Trio's going, yeah, I think I could do that.
I can make that happen for you.
And the next thing you know, they're like, the camera loves this guy. Screw being an extra. Can you say this line? And Regan, the next thing you know, Trejo's in movies. He's starring in movies. He's being all, and he makes a big deal. Trejo makes a big deal out of spending a lot of time in high schools in LA, talking to people, talking to young men, especially saying, you need to stay out of the joint, man. It's not what you think it is. It's a lot worse. So he donates a lot of his time, and he's doing the AA thing. And he says that by donating his time, it fills him with a sense of usefulness and purpose that you don't get just from being highly paid. Because you're doing the planet's work. You're useful and you're helping people out. And that's incredibly instructive, that the dam broke for him when he was doing somebody else a favor.
Yeah. I love the fact that he was doing that. And time is the commodity.
Yeah, isn't it?
It really is, man. Everything else can be measured in time.
Yeah, and he decides, I'm going to give you my time. And
well, what would your kids want more than anything else?
Oh boy, you're nailing it now.
What does your wife want more than anything else?
Yeah.
What does TikTok want more than anything else?
Oh boy, TikTok's a little too good at it.
Yeah, but guess what? They base their money on how much time they can take from you.
Yeah.
It's the commodity. It's the commodity right here, right now.
Yeah.
And you don't get a second chance. That bum on that park bench, you, me, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, everybody out there gets exactly 24 hours. One makes a lot of money, one makes no money. And here's the wildest thing. The guy on the bench can be a millionaire in a couple years. If he turns his life around and changes his mind and tries to go somewhere else with what he's doing, theoretically can be a millionaire in a couple years. It's not impossible. It's all about how you use that time and how you take advantage of it. And
yeah, where I'm at now is I want the time to contribute to somebody. Like, geez, we had another 40 minutes. I'd keep going, but
no, if it goes too long, honestly, Neal, it becomes a detriment for me because people only watch for so long.
Yeah, I hear you.
So maybe we should call it quits.
Have me on again.
I would love to, man. I would love to. I enjoyed the conversation. And I'll be honest with you, we only scratched the surface of what I wrote down here.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, no, actually it gets worse. The entire premise of this show evolved from me and my daughter talking to me asking 3 questions. And I have not asked any of the questions.
That's funny. That's great. Well, you know what? But you're in the moment. See? So you didn't just stick to the plan.
Yeah. And that's when the best stuff comes out.
Yeah, I think so.
Absolutely. So Neal, normally my ending is giving you a chance to plug whatever you want for your.
Yeah. All right. Well, storytelling is kind of my milieu. And I believe that it is a timeless art form and a timeless skill. In other words, no matter how much ChatGPT influences our life and how much automation there's going to be, we still need to be able to communicate ideas to other people. And I specialize in that, in both executive coaching and in programs. And if people would like to explore more, they can reach me at nealfoard@gmail.com. I spell my name unusually. It's NealFoard.com. That's, nealfoard@gmail.com. And then my persuasion business, passionatelogic.com. That's one word. That's of 2 words. Passionatelogic.com. And we teach the art of persuasion.
That's awesome. Neal, I appreciate your time and I enjoyed the conversation.
It's been a great pleasure, Regan. Yeah, me too. That was a real kick in the pants.
Absolutely, man. And we'll do it again. You have a good night.
All right, you too. Take care, man.
Weather is good, sun is shining, shining. Don't get my vibe.